Hi, I'd like to pitch an idea to you today to make a PC version of my roguelike game called Voyage to Farland. It's based on the Japanese mystery dungeon games, but it's much closer to Shiren the Wanderer, for example, than the Pokemon games. It started out as a Nintendo DS homebrew game, and I ported it to Android a couple of years ago. I'd like to test out crowdfunding because I've gotten a lot of requests recently to make a PC version, and not everybody has an Android phone. I've made other games in the past. There's RGB Bot, and recently I released Microchip Monsters. What would I do with funding if you donate? Well, I'd like to expand the game, adding some more mechanics, taking it from a game that will occupy you for a few months to a game that will keep you busy for up to a year. That means a couple more bonus dungeons, along with monsters and items to support the extra length. I'd also like to hire a professional artist to improve the graphics. So far, I've done all the graphics myself. Some of the sprites and background tiles are based on Daniel Cook's free prototyping graphics, Planet Cute and so on. But I've had to go through and animate all the sprites. For me, the gameplay is actually the most important part of a roguelike game, but I understand that looks in a video game are important too, so that's one thing I'd like to do with the funding. How about rewards? Well, you'll get a copy of the game along with beta access for some rewards, and for some of the more special reward tiers, I'd like to make a guidebook for the game, since the game is fairly deep and there are lots of little secrets hidden throughout the game that a more casual player may not find. What's the current state of the game? Let's have a look at the video. Some key points about it are that it has permadeath, so it's pretty strict that way. And what that means for people who are new to roguelikes is that when you're defeated, you're sent back to the beginning at level 1, and you lose all your items. So it's kind of hardcore that way. But there are some persistent parts of the game, including all your unlocked bonus dungeons, achievements, and even a warehouse for storing valuable items. The game currently has 3 NPCs you can recruit to fight alongside you, and they're sort of hidden away, so you won't find them unless you're exploring some of the more hidden places in the game. It ends up being a nice little quest to look for those NPCs. Currently the game has 4 themed dungeons. The base or starting dungeon is pretty difficult, but all the items are already pre-identified. However, when you unlock the more hardcore dungeon called the Path of No Return, most of the items are unidentified at the start there. They'll have a generic name, something like Brown Scroll or Jade Bead, and you have to use the item to test it out and then give it a label when you think you've identified it. This makes for some pretty interesting gameplay in the beginning of that dungeon. This game really puts an emphasis on strategy and usage of items and the monster's abilities instead of just grinding for levels, so it's definitely not a grind fest. It has what I like to call rich item interaction, which sounds kind of grandiose, but basically what I'm getting at with the phrase item interaction is that good items can sometimes be used against the player, and bad items also sometimes have a beneficial use. And the way the monsters, NPCs, and players' character interact with these items is fairly uniform, so you can do tricks like throwing a garlicky herb at an NPC, which will eat it and then blast noxious breath in the direction it was facing, possibly sickening a monster. Another thing that you can do is you can morph into monsters. If you find an empty vial, you can throw it at the monster to capture its essence, then later drink the vial to change into the monster. So morphing into a ghost can be pretty useful, for example, because you can then pass through walls and other cool stuff. With these types of mechanics, I think it really keeps the game from becoming one-dimensional or more of a grinding type of dungeon crawler. So I'm pretty excited about the possibility of getting it on a PC. So what do you think? Would you like to play this sort of a game on your PC? If so, how about donating to the project a little? I'd really appreciate it, and it would help keep this type of indie game development going and hopefully introduce more Western players to this type of roguelike game. So thanks for watching, and may the rogue be with you, always.